The snow flew into Nancy's face as the dogs pulled the sled forward. She was glad Steve had insisted she wear a face mask. A face mask. A face mask. Giant earmuffs? Close enough.
Argo Funk Book Review. Argo Funk Book Review.
Mr. Drew is in Anchorage, Alaska to meet with his old college buddy, Henry Wilco. Henry is a millionaire who runs his own shipping company. His son Steve wants to become a dog sledder instead of inheriting the family business, because playing with dogs is cooler than making money. Steve instantly dislikes Nancy almost as much as he instantly likes George. Steve is a jerk to Nancy the entire book, and towards the end, he explains he's jealous. Carson Drew is always bragging about her. He says stuff like, "Well, my daughter solved another mystery! She's had 40 jobs this year!" Steve feels kind of useless in comparison, but he thinks he'll win his father's approval by winning an upcoming dog sled race. The police interrupt with bad news. They found illegal ivory smuggled aboard one of Wilco's ships. Nancy agrees to take the case. John Tilden, the butler, makes a suspicious phone call when the police arrive, and he is so shocked to hear Nancy's a detective, he spills hot food everywhere. They go to a dance club along with Craig Miller, the friendly dog trainer. They meet Lindsay Dunning, another dog runner. Lindsay is a nice person who sings to her dogs instead of whipping them. I know I prefer hearing songs over being hit with weapons. They also meet Steve's ex-girlfriend, Amanda Spear. Amanda is not friendly. She insults Steve multiple times and swears revenge when she sees Steve get lovey-dovey with George. Nancy notes Amanda has some very expensive clothing for somebody with a low-paying job. Nancy explores the ship. She finds more smuggled ivory hidden in a container when the culprit turns off the lights and knocks her over. Nancy also visits the company's headquarters. She goes through their finance records, which doesn't work so well because Nancy doesn't know anything about accounting. Blah, blah, blah. Nancy discovers that, yes, Amanda doesn't make enough money to afford her lavish lifestyle. She finds that Steve quit his job 6 weeks ago after breaking up with Amanda. Are these employee records or gossip records? The culprit pushes Nancy down a flight of stairs, and by coincidence, all the suspects are in the building today. That means Nancy can't rule anyone out this early on in the book. Nancy goes souvenir shopping, and she finds an ivory bear carving that looks like the smuggled ones. She gets an expert to look at it. He confirms it's illegal contraband. So, this is the part of the culprit's plan that I don't understand. The culprit is smuggling expensive elephant ivory by pretending it's cheap walrus ivory, and then they sell it at walrus ivory prices. How is the culprit making a profit? If anything, the culprit is losing money by selling the expensive ivory on the cheap. It doesn't make sense to me, and maybe it doesn't make sense to Nancy either, because she hands the case over to the police. They investigate the ivory lead and discover the culprit is a man who does dog sledding. The culprit sabotages a dog race by setting off a firecracker, and Nancy questions the two minor suspects. Luckily, it doesn't take much before they confess all. John's secret is that his brother was arrested. He's worried he'll be fired if people find out. Amanda's secret is that she racked up a lot of debt recently buying fancy clothes. She doesn't want anyone to know about her financial struggles. George disappears right before a big storm hits. Nancy searches everywhere and finds George's scarf in the dog kennel. It looks like Craig is the culprit. George walked in on him when he was hiding ivory, so he kidnapped George, drugged her, and took her to his cabin in the woods. Nancy and Steve borrow Lindsay's dogs, and they sled to the cabin. Craig says he's trying to ruin the company because he hates the Wilcos. In particular, he wants revenge on Steve, because Steve gets to ride his dogs in the races. Craig does all the hard work training the dogs, but Steve gets all the glory. I find it weird that Craig acts like he's been wrong somehow, because that's how dog training normally works. You train other people's dogs, not your own. Craig pulls out a gun, but Nancy kicks it aside with her often forgotten martial arts skills. Nancy sleds back to town with George, but Craig gives chase. He tries to distract the dogs with a whip, but Nancy wins over the dogs by singing to them. Yes, the culprit defeat in this book is singing, "This land is your land." It's pretty awesome. Craig's dogs are distracted by a rabbit, and he crashes into a tree. The end. Post-book follow-up. This book has several short scenes about life in Alaska, like the one where they see how locals heat up their cars, and another where they see the northern lights. I thought these were neat additions which prove the author knows the area, but apparently not. Online reviews from real Alaskans say that the author clearly did no research and got everything wrong. The same thing happened when Nancy visited my state, so I feel your pain, Alaskans. I didn't like this book as much as previous ones. I had trouble telling the characters apart at first because they act similar to each other. I think the book should have combined Lindsay and Amanda into one character. That would have helped, especially since Lindsay is not really treated as a suspect at any point, even though, as Steve's main rival, she should at least be considered a person of interest. I was disappointed at how Steve's crush on George disappeared after the first few chapters, because that could have been interesting. The dog sledding stuff was halfway interesting, but I think it took up too much of the book. A third of the book is dog sledding, and it doesn't get tied to the mystery plot until the end. I noticed this book has an early culprit revelation. Nancy figures out who the culprit is 4 chapters before the ending. Normally it's 1 or 2 chapters. The book did an okay job of it, although you could argue it's filler for Nancy to defeat the culprit, then have the culprit immediately escape and get defeated a second time in the next chapter. Overall, I guess the book is fine, but I think a rewrite would have helped. It doesn't make sense how the culprits smuggle ivory only to sell it at a lower cost, and it's strange how Craig is mad that he's treated as a dog trainer in his dog trainer job. I give Nancy Drew Files number 53, Trail of Lies, 3 out of 10.